I'm intimidated. Who in the front row has this gorgeous voice?
Those two.
Thanks for the going. What a voice. Holy cow. Welcome. My name is Jerry McDaniel. I'm going to have to update that because the blogs, I don't do the blogs anymore. I'm more to writing now. And, you know, when I began blogging, I thought, you know, I'll do it every day. This will be awesome. And I did it 2 days in a row. Then I didn't have a whole lot to say, so I just kind of stretched it out and ended up being every other week. So I got to start off with a funny story. So a lot of you, some of you know, a lot of you don't, maybe some of you don't. I had a heart and a kidney transplant in the first part of 2020. And so every now and then I have to go get blood work and lab work, and they have to take an echo scan of the heart. And so this past week, hey Terry, sorry, I just like to call out people I know. They pay me $1 later. And so I did the blood work, I did the labs, met with the transplant team that I'm still in, you know. And they said, we'll send you for the echo scan of your heart. Okay. And they go by numbers, Jerry. And so I go, okay. So I go to the hospital, from the medical center to the hospital. And I get number 121. I said, okay. I sit down. Lady comes out. Number 53, number 53. And I'm looking at my number. It reminded me of that last scene in Beetlejuice where Michael Keaton steals the number. He goes, hey, look, but my head didn't shrink. I didn't say that was funny. It was just a true story, so I'm not going to use that one again. Right. I do have this book I'm proud of. Regular sells for $12.95. Sells for $10. There, that's my pitch. Today I want to talk about, just for a few minutes, because I want to leave a lot of time for messages. You know, I want to talk about the true self, the false self, and the higher self, right? And by the way, here's another funny story. I'm a Catholic and a Christian. Some people that matters, others, not so much. Probably doesn't matter in this church, I don't think. How many people at one point were Catholic? Raise your hand. Oh my God, I know. So I did a gallery reading in Jacksonville. We had 60. And I asked that. And of the 60 people, 40 people, the wind almost knocked me down. The 40 people raised their hand. I said, okay, so how many people are still Catholic? The hands went down, about 5 or 6. But I'm still Catholic because Spirit wants me to continue to talk to the Catholic people who don't really embrace these type of gifts, right? Okay. Again, I thought that was funny, but I guess not. So I'm going to talk about the false self, and you know, the false self. This is going to be short. It's not going to be real deep because I'm pretty surface guy. And the false self is mainly ego-based, label-based. You know, you're either Republican or you're Democrat. You're either liberal or conservative or whatever. You're either, you know, it's like a us and them, right? If you're not part of us, you're part of them. So it's a lot of labels surround the false self. In other words, folks, I was a account manager for a major pet food company. But that's the false self. I mean, it's not negative, it's just not who Jerry McDaniel is. So a lot of labels, a lot of roles society puts on us. And you know, think about it this way. Yes, I look at notes. I admire Joy Sager. He sits up here with no notes. And Jerry's not like that. Jerry's ADD, so he has to look at notes. So, you know, growing up, we played make-believe, right? We had roles. We make-believe, and whether you're a girl or a boy, you played a lot of make-believe stuff. And those are roles. That's not really who you are. And quite honestly, this is one of the, I'm glad you're recording this. My Christian friends will appreciate this. This is one of the challenges of Christianity, you know, is that we're Christians. We think we're the only ones going to the promised land. Especially, and I grew up Protestant. Protestants were, you know, our way is the only way. And that's a false narrative which leads to a false self. That means Native Americans don't go. That means Muslims, Hindus, agnostics, atheists, spiritualists, anybody but a Christian, God's just going to leave them behind, right? I was discussing this with a Protestant friend of mine. As you can imagine, the discussion wasn't going well. And he began by saying, are you a Christian? And I said, yeah, I'm Catholic. He goes, oh, for a moment I thought you were a Christian. And I'm like, where'd that come from? So he says, well, Christians, we do this. I said, okay, let me stop you there. Who's at the gate? The heavenly gates. He goes, St. Peter. I said, the First Pope of Catholic Church. What's your point? I said, my point is we know the doorman. So anyway, you know, so we might get it first. So you look at all these roles we play that is our false self. And a lot of times it's not negative, it's just roles we play. That's not who we truly are. Keep in mind, dear folks, the false self is more philosophical than metaphysical. I'll get to the metaphysical in a minute. And it's very, very ego-centered. You know, I'm going to redo my bio there to make it simpler, because Spirit said, just make it simple. You know, Jerry, you got this international clairvoyant medium. I said, yeah, I've done readings for people in 12 countries. Spirit went, who cares? I said, well, Jerry cares. Yeah, but you're the only one. Who cares that you're international? Just simplify it. So I took international off because Spirit was having a hissy fit. So, all right, so the true self is the nonconformist. I love people who are nonconformists, right? And that comes through all the time in the readings I do. They want us to, you know, people say you got to conform to society. Well, if you look at a Christian standpoint, Jesus was the biggest radical probably ever lived. Preached in the temples. He got upset because the temple, they had turned it into flea market, a flea world. And, you know, he was the biggest radical. So to have a change of mind and heart, you got to take a radical approach. So the true self doesn't conform to what society tells us to do, right? And true self is where people are passionate, where people love. Now, you can be a father, husband, wife, mother, uncle, aunt, son, brother, whatever. That's part of true self, because at the basis of that is love. At the basis of true self is love. At the basis of false self is a facade. All right? Make sense?
Yes.
Does it make sense?
Yes, yes, Jerry.
Thank God. Thank God, because it doesn't to me. Anyway, so the true self, we do things without fanfare. And that's why I want to redo my little bio. I just want to have you say, here's Jerry, almost like John Carson.
Oh, no, that's John Rogers.
Yes, John Rogers says that? He is so annoying, but don't get me started. So we don't let ego be the driver of a bus when we have our true self. See, by coming here, quite honestly, folks, you're taking a risk by coming here. You know that. That's okay. Where do you go? I go to a spiritualist church. What do they believe in? We believe in the continuity of life. You know, we believe that life continues. Now, there are more than 3,000 religions in the world. And the major ones all kind of preach the continuity of life, but it's either you're with the angels or you're charcoal briquettes. It's one of the two, right? You know, and we all know that heaven and hell doesn't exactly exist like this, levels of dimensions. So, again, both the false and the true self are more philosophical, right? So, it's going to be quick. We have a lot of time for message. Yeah. So I'll get to the higher self. When I first joined the circle with Emilio, Annette was there at the beginning, Rosie, who else? Carla, I'm sorry, and Chris. Everybody was getting all these messages, you know. I was like, I'm getting nothing. Nothing. Then it started to come, but I remember the first time, I know you guys have heard me say this, but Teresa was across from me. And we were doing messages, and Annette always, bam, 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 bam. And I was like, oh, I see nothing but darkness. They go, really? Describe it. I said, no, you don't understand. My eyes are closed. Darkness, the inside of my eyelids. And so Teresa said, well, I met with my council of elders. And I said, well, council of elders, my God, it's way away. What am I doing here? So then I started getting stuff, but it wasn't stuff like everybody else was getting. Finally, Emilio said, I know where you're getting your information from. And he sent me a clip on the higher self, a little thing, because he's a really good teacher. He teaches here, right? Still teaches here. So please attend some of his stuff that he teaches. And so I started reading up on the higher self, and it just made so much sense. You know, it's funny. I read the other day where I think it was Google fired a scientist because he had done something with artificial intelligence that he wasn't supposed to do. I don't know if you saw this, but I just glanced at it. Science cannot imitate the soul and the consciousness, especially the conscious. The soul, they try to reason what the soul is. They try to weigh somebody when they're dead, after they passed, and then they look at there's, 20-something grams. So they figure the soul is 20-something grams. Okay, if that helps you describe the soul, that's fine. But science cannot duplicate the higher self. And then within the higher self is your essence, your soul, your consciousness. To me, it's the 30,000 view of everything. Now, if I had to say, let's write down what you think the higher self is, we're going to have 20 or 30 different interpretations. So this is Jerry's interpretation. It's a point of contact with God. God doesn't care if you call God God or infinite intelligence. It's just the great I am. Even in the Bible, God rarely refers to himself as God. Itself is God, because God's not a man, it's energy, right? And so, once I discovered that that's what I channel, when people say, who do you channel? And I said, well, I don't know who I channel. I know I channel my higher self. So I'm a big follower of Edgar Cayce. However, Edgar Cayce took a negative view towards mediums, which kind of a negative view, which I don't agree with. So what's the difference between the higher self, true self, and the false self? The false self and the true self are philosophical. The higher self is metaphysical. I'm taking it's probably going to be a 1 to 2 year course on metaphysical science, and it's completely blown my mind what I thought I knew about metaphysics. But maybe that's for another time. But it's shown me an awful lot about the science of metaphysics. I'm a science person. I love spirituality, but I always think there's a science behind it somewhere. That's just me. So, I've been channeling my higher self, calling upon my higher self before I do a reading. I thank my higher self. I thank my third eye. Because the first gift that I really learned, that really made sense to me when I started doing this, was clairvoyance. And hopefully we're going to be doing a class on clairvoyance, a workshop I'm going to be doing on clairvoyance, and the other clairs. Some of the other clairs come really fascinated with that. And so the higher self is, it's like I described to somebody the other day doing a reading, and they said, can you describe? I said, what the other side is like. I said, I can give you my description as best as I know it. Imagine we're here, we're going 15 miles an hour through a school zone. The higher self is like the Indy 500 times 1,000. It moves very quickly. And, the higher the vibrations, the more it moves, right? The more the frequency and everything. And so the higher self plays a big part in that. And so lately I've been able to touch in on somebody's higher self. I don't have permission to, but Spirit will say, okay, you have permission. This is the higher self of that person. This is what we're getting. Make sense?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, you just want me to shut up, don't you? I get that at home. And so when you think of mediumship and psychic abilities they're gifts from God. Your intuition. I have men clients, not many, unfortunately, but mostly women. Men clients that I tell them that women's intuition is real, you just see them go. They're just, God, infinite, they're just built differently than men. They're more connected. So we have to work at it as men. We really do. I had a man client the other day, wanted to do a reading. I almost fell off my chair because I just don't get many men. And so many men could benefit, not from me, from just study this stuff. And so, excuse me. So the higher self is a big, big part. You look at mediumship, you look at psychic, you look at clairvoyance, you look at whether you do tarot cards, whatever you do. Higher self is a big part of everything that Sixth Sense has to offer. I look at it as the control tower, the higher self. Jerry's interpretation. And, oh man, we have a lot of time for messages. That's all I've got. Okay, that's it. That's the end of it.